far beyond the shores of mortal lands, where the horizon stretches into endless blue, and where sunlight dances upon the crests of waves like molten gold, lies the domain of Poseidon, god of the sea. Here, the waters are not merely liquid. They are alive, breathing with the pulse of the ocean itself, humming with the whispers of currents that have flowed since the dawn of the world. Mountains of coral rise like silent citadels beneath the surface, forests of seaweed sway like ancient temples, and creatures of every form, some delicate, some terrifying, move through the depths in perfect rhythm with the unseen tides. In this vast kingdom, Poseidon moves with a quiet authority, a presence felt even when unseen. He is a god of immense power, capable of conjuring storms that could shatter ships and summon waves taller than mountains. Yet even he knows that the true essence of the sea is not force, but balance. There are moments when the waters must sleep, when the tides must slow, and when the world above and below must be reminded that patience, reflection, and respect are as mighty as the fiercest storm. The quiet sea was not always so. Long ago, Poseidon's waters raged without end, driven by the passions of gods and mortals alike. Tempests would rise without warning, storms would scatter the creatures of the deep, and the waves would lash the shores with relentless fury. Sailors feared the ocean, and even gods hesitated before venturing too close. Yet Poseidon, ever watchful and wise, sought to temper his own strength with understanding, to cultivate a portion of his kingdom where calm could reign, where the sea itself could teach those who approached it the lessons of humility, respect, and serenity. It began in a hidden cove, a place untouched by mortal hands and shielded from the jealous eyes of rival spirits. The waters here shimmered with an ethereal light, catching the first rays of dawn and reflecting the stars at night, as though the heavens themselves were mirrored upon the surface. Poseidon knelt beside this nascent sea, his trident brushing the water's edge, sending ripples that carried with them a quiet magic. "Here," he murmured, his voice deep and resonant, "I shall create a place where the restless find peace, where the proud learn humility, and where the hearts of mortals and creatures alike may be guided toward harmony." The waves responded, rising and falling in perfect cadence, as if the sea itself understood the god's intentions. Fish swam in synchronized patterns, their scales flashing silver and blue, while sea-horses danced through the kelp like living ribbons of light. Dolphins leaped joyfully, their cries echoing like music across the surface, and even the deep, silent creatures that lurked in the shadows seemed to pause, sensing the calm that was beginning to weave through the waters. Yet the quiet sea was more than a place of stillness. It was a living teacher. Poseidon imbued it with lessons as subtle as the currents, as gentle as the sway of seaweed in the undercurrent. The waters would whisper to those who listened, patience in the face of turbulence, courage when faced with the unknown, respect for forces greater than oneself, and the understanding that power is most potent when tempered with wisdom. Every ripple carried meaning, every tide was a narrative, and every wave a reminder that the world is vast, mysterious, and interconnected. Even as he worked, Poseidon knew that challenges would arise. Envious spirits of chaos stirred in the shadows, drawn to the serenity that threatened their influence. Some sought to disrupt the calm, to summon storms that would unravel the harmony of the quiet sea. Others, mortals or minor gods, would seek to exploit its power, to bend the waters to selfish purposes. Poseidon, patient and vigilant, prepared the waters for these trials. He infused the currents with subtle protections, weaving illusions of safety and reflection that would guide the unwary toward understanding rather than destruction. As the first dawn broke over the tranquil waters, the sea shimmered with a brilliance that was neither blinding nor harsh, but perfect in its quiet radiance. The surface reflected the sky in hues of sapphire and silver, while beneath, the depths pulsed with a hidden, gentle energy. The quiet sea had taken its first breath, and with it came the promise of lessons that would span generations, guiding mortals and creatures alike in ways both visible and unseen. From the highest waves to the hidden trenches, life began to settle into the rhythm of the quiet sea. Schools of fish moved like flowing rivers of silver, crabs scuttled along the sand in careful harmony, and the larger predators hunted only when necessary, their actions tempered by the unseen guidance of Poseidon's hand. Even storms that appeared on the horizon seemed to hesitate, bowing subtly to the calm that had taken root. The quiet sea, though born of a god's desire, had become its own entity, a living, breathing realm of reflection, patience, and balance. And so the stage was set. The quiet sea would soon encounter mortals, sailors seeking fortune, fishermen seeking sustenance, travelers seeking adventure, and each would find that the waters taught not only navigation, but the secrets of their own hearts. Each trial, each ripple, each whisper of the tides carried wisdom that would endure far beyond a moment of encounter. And Poseidon, ever watchful, would guide these lessons from above, unseen yet always present, ensuring that the quiet sea remained a place where power was tempered with wisdom and strength guided by patience. Thus begins the story of Poseidon's quiet sea, a tale of divine creation, mortal trials, and the enduring power of serenity, patience, and harmony. Here, in the calm between the waves, the lessons of the ocean await those who dare to listen, to respect, and to learn from the depths of the world that a god has nurtured with care. In the beginning, the sea was a realm of chaos and motion. Waves clashed like titans in a never-ending struggle. Storms raged with a ferocity that shattered ships, and the creatures of the deep darted and scattered, their lives dictated by survival rather than harmony. Poseidon, god of the sea, observed this world with a measured gaze. He saw the beauty within the tumult, but he also saw the suffering, the imbalance, and the consequences of unrestrained force. The god of the oceans was powerful beyond measure, his trident capable of raising mountains of water or summoning tempests that could swallow islands. Yet in his heart, he carried the knowledge that true power is not simply the ability to dominate. It is the capacity to cultivate balance, to nurture, and to guide. And so, he resolved to create a portion of his realm where the waters would speak not in fury but in wisdom, where even mortals could learn the quiet lessons of patience, courage, and harmony with forces greater than themselves. He began in a hidden cove, secluded from the eyes of mortals and shielded from the envy of spirits who delighted in chaos. The waters shimmered with a soft, silvery light, as if moonbeams had descended to mingle with the tides. Poseidon knelt by the edge, his trident piercing the surface, sending gentle ripples across the cove. With each movement, the current obeyed not only his command, but his intent. He whispered to the waters, "Here, you shall be more than waves. You shall teach, you shall guide, and you shall reflect the harmony of the world above and below." The cove responded to his voice. The waters stilled where once they had roared, forming pools of serene clarity. Beneath the surface, coral structures began to rise, intricate and delicate, like temples carved by the patient hands of time itself. Seaweed forests swayed in synchronized rhythm, creating passageways and sanctuaries for the creatures that would inhabit this quiet domain. Fish of all colors moved in careful patterns, their silvery scales catching the light in a display of natural artistry. Even the great predators, usually driven by hunger and instinct, followed a rhythm imposed by the invisible guidance of the god, hunting with precision yet respect, maintaining balance in the ecosystem. Poseidon's work was meticulous. He infused the waters with lessons for all who might encounter them. Every ripple carried understanding, patience in the face of uncertainty, courage in moments of danger, respect for life in all its forms, and the recognition that strength is most meaningful when tempered by wisdom. Even the smallest creatures, from the tiniest shrimp to the darting schools of fish, felt the influence of this divine guidance. They moved not only to survive, but to thrive in a manner harmonious with their environment. The quiet sea was not without its own defenses. From the shadows emerged spirits of envy and chaos, minor deities who delighted in disorder and sought to undo the tranquility that Poseidon was creating. They stirred the waters, attempting to summon whirlpools and currents to scatter the creatures, to frighten the mortals who might one day visit, and to corrupt the lessons embedded within the waters. Yet Poseidon, calm and unyielding, countered them not with wrath but with precision. He redirected the currents, tempered the storms, and allowed the mischievous spirits to see themselves reflected in the clarity of the waters. Their anger and envy dissolved into the rhythm of the ocean, teaching them, perhaps unwittingly, that patience and balance often outweigh chaos and pride. As the cove grew into a sanctuary, the first sea creatures began to recognize it as a place of order and wisdom. Dolphins swam with joy, leaping through the soft waves, their clicks and songs resonating with the harmony of the waters. Sea turtles glided gracefully through the kelp forests, moving with deliberate care rather than haste. Even the deep-dwelling creatures, often silent and unseen, felt the subtle guidance of Poseidon's magic, navigating the undercurrents with newfound clarity and purpose. Poseidon also infused the quiet sea with lessons for mortals who might one day approach it. The waves would not merely carry ships. They would mirror the hearts of those aboard. A captain filled with impatience would find the waters resisting, the currents subtly teaching restraint. A sailor motivated by greed or pride would face subtle obstacles, learning that ambition untempered by respect leads to peril. Conversely, those who approached with humility, care, and attentiveness would find the waters guiding them safely, revealing hidden paths and offering clarity in moments of uncertainty. The transformation was not instantaneous. The quiet sea required time to awaken fully. Poseidon nurtured it over months and years, attending to the smallest details, the placement of coral, the rhythm of the tides, the flow of sunlight through the water. He whispered to the winds that swept over the cove, shaping gentle breezes that mirrored the calm below, ensuring that even the air above carried lessons of patience and reflection. The sky and the ocean became partners in a subtle dance of guidance, both reflecting the god's intention to teach harmony through observation and experience rather than force. Even storms that approached from distant horizons were tempered. Where once Poseidon might have unleashed his full power and fury, he now allowed the winds and waves to test the quiet sea in measured ways. A sudden gust might challenge a swimmer or a small boat, teaching courage. A shifting tide might require adjustment, teaching attentiveness. A fleeting thundercloud might remind all who watch that vigilance is always required, even in moments of calm. Through these carefully guided trials, the quiet sea matured, becoming a living testament to the god's wisdom and foresight. And so, the quiet sea took shape, not merely as water, sand, and coral, but as a living, breathing teacher. It was a place where the rhythm of nature reflected the rhythm of the heart, where lessons were embedded in every current, wave, and ripple. Mortals and creatures alike would find guidance here, not through command or punishment, but through experience, reflection, and the subtle, unyielding presence of Poseidon himself. The god of the sea paused to observe his creation, standing at the edge of the cove as sunlight shimmered across the surface. The waters mirrored the sky perfectly, a flawless canvas of blue and silver. He traced a finger along the crest of a gentle wave, feeling the pulse of life within it. "This," he whispered, "is a sea of patience, of reflection, of quiet power. Here, the world will learn what cannot be taught with force, and hearts will be guided without fear." And so began the legacy of the quiet sea, a sanctuary for life, a teacher for mortals, a realm where the lessons of patience, humility, courage, and respect were written into every drop of water. Poseidon's quiet sea had been born, and with it came a promise that even the mightiest power could be tempered, that even the restless tides could whisper wisdom, and that those who approached with care and understanding would find guidance flowing as naturally as the waves themselves. And so, the quiet sea grew not only in its physical form, but in influence. Mortals learned to navigate it with respect, to approach its depths with care, and to receive its lessons with humility. Poseidon's guidance flowed invisibly, shaping hearts and minds as much as the tides shaped sand and stone. The waters had become more than a place. They were a living mentor, a reflection of divine wisdom, and a bridge between the mortal and immortal realms. The first mortal encounters set the tone for all who would follow. Sailors learned patience. Fishermen discovered clarity. Travelers found courage and reflection. The quiet sea became a sanctuary where mortal lives intertwined with divine purpose, each wave and current a subtle instructor. Poseidon watched from the deep, a silent guardian of lessons both simple and profound, ensuring that all who approached would find not only the calm of the waters, but the awakening of insight within themselves. The quiet sea also became a place of learning for communities. Fishermen who once competed aggressively began to cooperate, sharing knowledge of currents, tides, and safe passages. Villagers found that disputes settled more peacefully after journeys to the tranquil waters. Even children, who accompanied parents on short trips, absorbed lessons in patience and care. The sea did not speak in commands, but in experience, shaping behavior naturally, allowing virtue to grow organically within the hearts of those who engaged with it. Word of these encounters spread like ripples across distant shores. Poets sang of the silent guidance of Poseidon's waters, describing how the ocean could teach without speaking, how even a god's power could be conveyed through subtle influence rather than force. Philosophers debated the lessons of the quiet sea, inspired by accounts of its transformative effect on sailors, fishermen, and travelers. Mortals began to revere the cove not as a source of wealth, but as a sanctuary of wisdom, a sacred space where the divine and mortal intersected through the medium of the ocean itself. Yet challenges continued. Occasionally, ambitious or envious spirits approached the quiet sea, attempting to disrupt its calm or exploit its influence. Poseidon did not strike them with wrath. Instead, the waters themselves responded, subtly reflecting their intentions back upon them. Currents that once seemed placid became tricky for the arrogant, guiding them to confront their own pride. Waves that shimmered with brilliance reflected the greed in their hearts, showing them the consequences of their actions. In every trial, the quiet sea remained a teacher, emphasizing lessons over punishment, insight over fear, and harmony over destruction. Some mortals arrived with greed in their hearts, seeking treasures hidden beneath the waves or wishing to dominate the quiet sea for personal gain. Poseidon allowed them to explore, but the waters responded as if aware of their intent. Shimmering currents would divert them from hidden shoals, guiding them toward reflection rather than riches. A sailor attempting to snatch a rare shell might find it eluding his grasp repeatedly, each near success a lesson in humility. Through frustration, they learned that the sea's true treasures were not material, but lessons in patience, courage, and respect for forces greater than themselves. Meanwhile, travelers seeking peace discovered that the quiet sea offered more than safety. It offered insight. Those who approached with open hearts felt a calm that settled not only their bodies but their minds. The whisper of the tides seemed to echo their thoughts, reflecting fears, ambitions, and desires, allowing each visitor to confront the truth of their own hearts. Some wept under the gentle waves, releasing sorrow and anger. Others meditated upon the shore, gaining clarity and direction for decisions long postponed. The quiet sea became a mirror of the soul, showing both the strengths and the flaws of all who entered its domain. Even storms, when they arose from distant horizons, were tempered in this sanctuary. Unlike the furious tempests that battered mortal lands elsewhere, here they came as small, controlled trials. A sudden gust of wind might test a sailor's focus. A swelling wave might demand calm and steady hands. Poseidon allowed these minor challenges to teach courage and resilience. Those who succumbed to fear or rash action were nudged gently back into equilibrium by the currents, while those who approached with mindfulness found themselves rewarded with guidance, insight, and ease of passage. Nearby, a young sailor had ventured from a distant port, eager to test the fabled waters and claim the fame of navigating a sea untouched by storms. Pride swelled in his chest, and yet the first currents he encountered nudged his small craft to the side, forcing him to adjust his course with careful attention. Every movement of the rudder, every adjustment of the sail, became a lesson. He realized that the sea did not yield to arrogance. It demanded respect, reflection, and harmony. With each careful correction, he learned not only the art of navigation, but the quiet power of humility. Poseidon watched from his hidden depths, unseen yet ever present, guiding these encounters subtly. He allowed the mortals to face minor challenges, currents that tested focus, unexpected tides that required patience, and sudden eddies that reminded them that even calm waters demand respect. No mortal was harmed, no vessel was lost. Yet each encounter carried meaning, teaching lessons that could not be rushed or forced, only understood through observation, reflection, and experience. Even the creatures of the quiet sea participated in these lessons. Schools of fish swirled in patterns that mirrored the intentions of the sailors, nudging those with arrogance into careful consideration or allowing those with patience to glide smoothly through the waters. Dolphins leapt in arcs that mirrored the rhythm of the waves, signaling harmony, cooperation, and balance. The great sea turtles moved steadily across the sand, demonstrating endurance and the value of moving thoughtfully without haste. Every element of the ecosystem was aligned with Poseidon's vision, subtly guiding mortals toward wisdom without ever imposing his will directly. Word of the tranquil, shimmering waters of Poseidon's quiet sea spread slowly at first, carried by the whispers of winds, the flight of seabirds, and the tales of a few fortunate sailors who had glimpsed its calm from afar. Mortals, who had long feared the wrathful waves and unpredictable tempests, were intrigued. Some sought fortune and adventure. Others sought wisdom or solace. Yet all felt a subtle compulsion to approach the waters with reverence. The quiet sea seemed to call to them, offering guidance in its silence, lessons in its ripples, and understanding in its depths. The first to arrive was a weathered fisherman, whose nets had often returned empty from the turbulent waters beyond. His hands were calloused, his gaze cautious, and his heart burdened with worry. He approached the edge of the quiet sea with a mix of hope and trepidation. As he stepped into the shallow water, He felt the current gently adjusting to his movement, guiding his path and sensing his intent. The waves whispered, not in words, but in subtle shifts, teaching him patience. A wave that might have pushed him backward instead circled calmly, encouraging steady rhythm in his casting and mindful attention to his surroundings. Though the quiet sea had become a sanctuary of calm and wisdom, Poseidon knew that true understanding is forged not only in peace, but also through challenge. Even the most serene waters must test those who enter, revealing the depth of their courage, patience, and respect. For every mortal or creature who approached the cove with humility, there were others driven by ambition, pride, or the desire for dominion. Those whose hearts could not resist the allure of power over the quiet sea. The first such trial came in the form of a mighty storm, not of Poseidon's own making, but summoned from distant corners of the ocean by restless spirits who delighted in chaos. Dark clouds rolled across the horizon, lightning streaking like jagged silver upon the sky, and waves rose in sudden tumult, crashing against the rocks of the cove. Sailors who had approached the waters expecting ease now faced the raw force of nature, testing every skill, every decision, every ounce of courage. Yet the storm was unlike others. It did not seek to destroy, only to instruct. Currents shifted with intelligence, guiding those who listened while resisting those who acted rashly. A captain, quick to panic and shout orders, found his boat tossed repeatedly, the oars slipping from his hands as if the sea itself were teaching him restraint. In contrast, a young sailor who had approached with calm and attentiveness navigated the waves with careful precision, learning not through force but through observation, reflection, and the steady application of skill. The trials extended beyond weather. Ambitious mortals arrived, seeking to claim dominion over the quiet sea, believing that if they mastered its currents, they would command the respect of their peers and gain untold fame. Poseidon allowed them access, for only through experience could they learn humility. The waters seemed placid at first, almost welcoming, yet hidden eddies and subtle currents guided them into challenges. Rocks concealed beneath the surface tested their attention. Shifting tides demanded adaptability. Sudden whirlpools forced patience and clear thinking. Those who sought to dominate through pride alone found frustration and, ultimately, a reflection of their own arrogance in the restless waters. Even creatures of the sea were part of the trials. Great sharks swam as guardians of the currents, testing the courage of those who approached too hastily. Schools of fish formed patterns that revealed or concealed paths, depending on the intentions of the observer. Dolphins leapt in arcs that seemed playful, yet each movement held a lesson. Teamwork, timing, and respect for the forces that guide life. Poseidon's magic ensured that no mortal was harmed unduly, but every encounter carried meaning, a subtle reflection of virtue or vice. Beyond the cove, rival sea spirits, minor gods of envy, jealousy, and discord, sought to disrupt the harmony. They stirred distant waves, attempted to confuse travelers with illusions, and whispered promises of wealth or glory to lure mortals into reckless action. Poseidon, however, allowed these trials to unfold naturally, trusting in the wisdom of the quiet sea to teach lessons rather than punishment. Those who succumbed to temptation found themselves lost in currents that circled endlessly, teaching patience and reflection before they could escape. Those who maintained mindfulness navigated with ease, discovering hidden sanctuaries, safe passages, and treasures not of gold but of insight. Some trials were deeply personal. A young fisherman, eager to prove his worth, faced sudden tempests that mirrored his inner impatience. Each wave reflected his fears. Each gust of wind challenged his determination. Only by calming his heart, respecting the rhythm of the waters, and trusting both his skill and intuition did he find safe passage. A nobleman seeking to control the tides for personal gain encountered currents that moved unpredictably, forcing him to release pride and embrace humility. Each challenge was unique, crafted by the invisible hand of Poseidon and the living intelligence of the quiet sea itself. Even alliances were tested. Communities of sailors, who once competed aggressively over routes and catches, now approached the cove together. Yet when the waters presented obstacles, each group had to choose between selfish action and cooperation. Those who learned to work together discovered that harmony multiplies success, that trust and collaboration are as powerful as skill or strength. Those who chose pride or dominance faced repetition of their failures until understanding prevailed. In this way, the quiet sea became a teacher not only of personal virtue, but of collective wisdom. Over time, the trials became legendary. Stories spread across lands and ports of the waters that reflected hearts, of challenges that could be overcome only with courage, patience, and respect. Poets and philosophers debated the lessons, capturing them in song and writing, ensuring that even those who had never seen the cove could feel its influence. Mortals began to recognize that power, unchecked by wisdom, brings instability, while restraint, observation, and respect for natural forces bring true mastery. The quiet sea also influenced the natural world itself. The coral reefs thrived under the influence of Poseidon's magic, demonstrating the value of patience and steady growth. Schools of fish moved in complex, harmonious patterns, a living illustration of cooperation and attentiveness. Even predators learned restraint, hunting only when necessary, reflecting the broader lesson that strength must be balanced with wisdom and care. The entire ecosystem became a mirror for mortal behavior, teaching subtly but profoundly that harmony benefits all. As decades passed, the quiet sea faced new forms of trial. Pirates sought to exploit its calm, believing that they could capture its treasures or dominate its waters. Poseidon allowed them to enter, only to teach lessons of humility and respect. Currents shifted to challenge them. Fish schools blocked or revealed paths, and sudden waves reflected the arrogance in their hearts. Only those willing to surrender pride and approach with awareness found safety and guidance. The sea's lessons were impartial, yet unyielding, revealing the truth that nature and the divine favors those who respect it. Through all these trials, Poseidon remained a silent observer, guiding without interference, teaching without decree. His presence was felt in the rhythm of the waves, the shifts of the tides, and the subtle currents that rewarded wisdom and patience. Mortals learned not by command, but by experience, internalizing the lessons of courage, humility, cooperation, and respect for forces greater than themselves. Thus, the quiet sea became more than a refuge. It became a crucible. Here, hearts were tempered, skills were honed, and understanding was gained. The mortal and divine intertwined through challenge, reflection, and the silent guidance of Poseidon. Every storm, every shifting current, and every unexpected encounter carried meaning, transforming those who approached the waters with openness and teaching those who acted with pride the value of restraint. By the end of each season, the quiet sea had tested countless mortals and creatures, leaving them wiser, calmer, and more attuned to the rhythm of the world. The cove had become a sanctuary not only of serenity, but of growth, a living testament to the god's vision that true strength is tempered by patience, that courage is inseparable from respect, and that ambition, when guided wisely, can flourish, but when unchecked, can falter. And so, the trials of nature and ambition continued, as waves rose and fell, as winds whispered and tides shifted, and as Poseidon's quiet sea shaped the hearts, minds, and actions of mortals. Here, in the interplay of challenge and reflection, the waters taught the enduring lessons that would echo across generations, shaping the course of those who dared to listen and learn from the depths of the god's domain. The quiet sea, once a hidden cove of reflective waters, had grown in both presence and influence. Word of its serenity and subtle guidance had spread across islands and coastal lands, carried by fishermen, sailors, poets, and wandering philosophers. Travelers came not merely to navigate its waters, but to experience the transformation that Poseidon's creation offered, a transformation that reached deep into the hearts and minds of all who approached it with respect. Mortals now arrived in greater numbers, not as mere seekers of fortune, but as pilgrims of understanding. Communities began to recognize the quiet sea as a place where wisdom could be observed and internalized. Villages near the coast noticed that their fishermen returned calmer, their decisions more deliberate, and disputes settled with greater fairness. Sailors who once quarreled over the best routes now collaborated, sharing knowledge of currents, tides, and hidden hazards. The quiet sea had become a teacher, a mentor, and a guide, shaping the moral fabric of those who interacted with it. Even those who had once approached with selfish intent found themselves changed. A captain driven by ambition to control the waters learned patience as he navigated subtle currents, discovering that yielding to the rhythm of the sea brought greater success than force ever could. A young fisherman who had arrived seeking riches discovered contentment in careful observation, understanding that the true wealth of the quiet sea lay not in fish or treasure, but in the clarity and courage it cultivated. The lessons were subtle yet profound. Courage balanced by restraint, ambition tempered by respect, strength guided by wisdom. Poseidon observed these transformations with quiet satisfaction. From the hidden depths of his kingdom, he watched as mortal communities flourished not through conquest or domination, but through harmony and understanding. He saw families and villages learning the value of cooperation, guided by the invisible hand of the quiet sea. Even children who accompanied their parents began to absorb the lessons intuitively, learning patience while watching the fish glide in harmony, courage while navigating small ripples, and respect for life through observing the creatures of the deep. The quiet sea's influence extended beyond the individual. Entire communities began to adapt their behavior to mirror the harmony they witnessed in the waters. Villages that once fought over resources learned negotiation and sharing. Sailors returning from the quiet sea brought stories of collaboration and mutual respect, inspiring changes in distant ports. Poets and philosophers wrote of the sea's wisdom, crafting stories and teachings that would endure for generations. The quiet sea, once hidden and protected, had become a beacon of guidance, shaping the culture and values of human civilization through the patient work of divine influence. Nature itself responded to the harmony the quiet sea cultivated. Coral reefs flourished more richly than before, their intricate forms demonstrating the value of steady growth and careful attention. Schools of fish moved in patterns that mirrored cooperation, hunting only when necessary, avoiding conflict when possible. Even predators of the deep seemed to temper their instincts, as if influenced by an unseen hand that reminded them that restraint strengthens and harmony preserves life. The quiet sea had become a living classroom, a testament to the interconnection of all things and the subtle power of guidance over domination. Legends grew, not of great battles or storms, but of transformation and subtle wisdom. Sailors spoke of waters that mirrored their hearts, of tides that guided the humble and tested the proud. Fishermen recounted experiences that taught patience, courage, and insight. Villagers told of how the quiet sea had reshaped their lives, teaching them cooperation, fairness, and the enduring value of respect for forces greater than themselves. Even minor gods and spirits began to regard the cove with awe, recognizing the unique power that flowed not through fury, but through quiet influence and subtle teaching. Yet transformation was not confined to mortals. Poseidon himself observed that the creation of the quiet sea had changed him as well. He, who had once ruled with tempestuous authority, found satisfaction in restraint. The act of guiding rather than commanding, of teaching through experience rather than force, revealed a deeper dimension of his power. It was a reminder that even gods can learn, that true influence lies not merely in action, but in the ability to shape outcomes through wisdom and subtlety. Over the years, the quiet sea became a central place of reflection for travelers, philosophers, and even other gods. Mortals arrived to seek guidance. Poets came to find inspiration, and sea creatures thrived in its calm. Poseidon's vision had blossomed into a living legacy, a domain where the rhythm of the tides mirrored the rhythm of the soul, where courage and patience intertwined, and where respect for life and the forces of nature were understood not as a lesson imposed, but as a truth experienced. Even the surrounding seas seemed to respond. Storms elsewhere were tempered by the ripple effect of the quiet sea. Currents became more predictable, and distant shores received safer passages. The influence of this sanctuary extended far beyond its physical boundaries, teaching that balance in one part of the world can create harmony in many others. Mortals began to understand that wisdom, patience, and respect are forces as real and influential as the winds, the tides, or the gods themselves. Communities began to celebrate the quiet sea with festivals, songs, and rituals. They did not claim ownership of it, nor did they attempt to dominate its waters. Instead, they honored it, acknowledging that the lessons it offered were gifts, not tools for power. Through these acts, Poseidon's quiet sea became a central symbol of transformation, showing that the greatest mastery comes not from force, but from alignment with a natural and divine order. Generations of sailors, fishermen, and travelers passed through, each leaving their imprint on the legacy of the cove. The quiet sea had become a mirror for human character, a canvas on which virtues and flaws were revealed, and a guide that shaped behavior, not through fear or threat, but through insight and reflection. Even distant lands heard of the cove, and those who could not journey there themselves were influenced by the stories, poems, and philosophies that spread its teachings. And so, the quiet sea's transformation continued, shaping not only the world of mortals, but also the understanding of divine influence itself. Poseidon's vision of harmony, patience, and subtle guidance had become reality. The quiet sea was no longer merely a hidden sanctuary. It was a living testament to the enduring power of restraint, wisdom, and the patient cultivation of virtue. Through every ripple, every current, and every interaction, the quiet sea taught that courage without patience falters, ambition without respect fails, and power without wisdom is hollow. Poseidon had created more than calm waters. He had created a living legacy, a teacher of souls, and a sanctuary where both mortal and divine could learn the truth that harmony is stronger than chaos, and that the quiet, steady influence of wisdom endures beyond the stormiest of tempests. The quiet sea, born of Poseidon's will and nurtured by his wisdom, had endured for countless years, a sanctuary of serenity, guidance, and subtle power. Yet its influence extended beyond the tides and currents, beyond the shores of mortal lands, and even beyond the gaze of gods. It had become a living symbol, a mirror of the eternal lessons of patience, humility, courage, and respect, a force as enduring as the ocean itself. Mortals who had once approached the waters in fear or ambition now spoke of them with reverence. Sailors remembered the trials that tested their courage. Fishermen recalled the lessons of patience and steady observation. Philosophers pondered the reflections the waves had revealed. Songs were composed, weaving the tale of the quiet sea into the very fabric of human culture. Every ripple, every wave, and every hidden depth carried the weight of Poseidon's teaching, echoing in the hearts of those who would never see the waters for themselves. Even as generations passed, the quiet sea remained unchanged in its essential nature. New sailors and travelers came, unaware of the legacies that preceded them, yet instinctively guided by the same currents, patterns, and lessons. A young navigator, learning the ropes of leadership, would find the tides reflecting his doubts, encouraging reflection before action. A weary traveler, burdened by sorrow, might drift among gentle waves and discover clarity in their rhythmic motion. Each encounter was unique, tailored by the living intelligence of the waters themselves, yet always reinforcing the eternal truths that Poseidon had embedded at the sea's creation. The sea creatures themselves had become embodiments of these lessons. Schools of fish moved with the harmony of a well-conducted symphony. Great turtles glided with steadfast patience. Even the deep predators tempered their instincts, hunting only when necessity demanded. Observers, both mortal and divine, could read the rhythm of the waters as a language, interpreting the dance of life and learning the virtues of balance and harmony. Every movement reflected a truth that could shape behavior, cultivate wisdom, and inspire reflection across time. Poseidon, watching from his hidden depths, understood that his creation had transcended mere instruction. The quiet sea was no longer simply a reflection of his will. It was a living, enduring mentor, capable of teaching even those who never directly perceived the god's presence. Mortals and minor spirits alike felt the influence, sometimes as instinct, sometimes as revelation, always as guidance. The waters have become a force of nature in the truest sense, both powerful and benevolent, subtle yet undeniable. Legends began to describe the quiet sea as eternal. Even as storms raged in distant waters, the sanctuary remained untouched, its influence reaching farther with each passing season. Those who sought its counsel returned to their communities transformed. Leaders made wiser decisions, families acted with greater empathy, and scholars found inspiration for philosophy, science, and art. The quiet sea, though hidden from most eyes, shaped the world above, an unseen teacher of enduring virtue. Beyond mortal shores, other gods began to take notice. Some, long accustomed to the brash displays of power, marveled at the quiet sea's subtlety. Here, a god's influence was profound not because of destruction, but because of guidance, not because of fear, but because of wisdom. Minor spirits who had once sought to sow chaos found themselves shaped instead by reflection, learning restraint through the mirrored currents. Poseidon's quiet sea became a testament that even the mightiest forces can achieve more through patience than through might, more through reflection than through command. The lessons of the quiet sea endured through countless seasons, echoing in the rhythm of tides and the lives of mortals. Its presence inspired poetry, philosophy, and reflection on the interconnectedness of life. Mortals who had learned its subtle teachings became advocates of harmony, modeling patience, courage, and respect in their communities. Even those untouched directly by the waters felt its influence through the spread of stories, the rhythm of culture, and the quiet guidance of those who had visited the sanctuary. Poseidon himself became a figure not only of power, but of wisdom tempered by care. Where once he might have relied on storms and tempests to enforce respect, he now saw that true influence lay in teaching through experience, subtle guidance, and the creation of living lessons. The quiet sea reflected not only the potential of mortals to learn and grow, but also the capacity of even gods to shape the world in enduring, benevolent ways. And so, the quiet sea remained, a living legacy of harmony, patience, courage, and insight. Its waters shimmered in perpetual calm, reflecting the sky, the moon, and the hearts of those who approached with openness. The creatures thrived, the mortal communities flourished, and the lessons embedded in every ripple endured. Sailors would continue to navigate its currents, travelers would continue to seek its guidance, and poets would continue to celebrate its wisdom, ensuring that the legacy of Poseidon's quiet sea would resonate for generations yet to come. Even when distant lands faced storms, when ambition threatened to disturb the fragile balance of human affairs, or when hearts grew restless and impatient, the quiet sea remained a symbol, a reminder that the greatest power lies not in dominance, but in understanding, patience, and alignment with forces greater than oneself. Its eternal presence whispered across time, that courage tempered by wisdom endures, that ambition guided by respect succeeds, and that even the restless, tumultuous world can find balance through reflection, care, and quiet insight. And so, under the moonlight, as waves shimmered like silver across the calm waters, Poseidon watched, content in the knowledge that his creation had achieved its purpose. The quiet sea was eternal, a sanctuary of reflection and wisdom, a living testament to the enduring power of patience, harmony, and subtle guidance. Mortals would come and go, storms would rise and fall, but the legacy of the quiet sea would endure forever, a mirror of the divine, a teacher of hearts, and a timeless force for balance and understanding.